Creator and all beings of light and love, we gather here, inviting you in fully to help us dissect and discern the truth of what we need to know now for a more integrous and immediate future. As responsible people, we cannot afford to act on important matters with little or no truth or accurate information. This is where we call on you, on our spirit guides, and on sublime and divine energies to bring us to greater consciousness, to greater discernment and brightness of understanding, to truth. We need now, more than ever, to hone our awareness and cleave to the primary absolute. Let it be so, and so it is.
Thank you, Charlie.
My pleasure. So I want to thank you all for being here. My name is Charlie White. I'm with the Oregon Statewide General Assembly, and we have an issue that has come up, and it's been brewing for a long time. But sometimes there's just an incident or a trigger or some awareness that comes to us that we really feel it needs to be addressed. So that's what this is. And the topic is Fairness and Integrity in Election 2022. So would those of you who are present and visible introduce yourselves, please?
I'm Cynthia Palmentier, and I'm part of the Action Committee on the Oregon Statewide General Assembly.
Thank you. Ron?
I'm Ron Verlman.
William?
I'm William Appel. I'm with the Oregon Statewide General Assembly working on the technology, the TV show, whatnot.
Thank you. And Brandon is not visible here, but Brandon, you want to introduce yourself, please?
Brandon Wingerder here on Kaiser, participating in this event.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your presence. So today I learned there's a gubernatorial debate in April, one on the 5th and one on the 7th on K2, KATU, Channel 2 News. What I also learned is that to qualify to be in the debate, $750,000 is required in the candidates' coffers. So I don't know how much of that goes to the stations, or if that means that that's in their coffers, that they've raised that much money, or if that's the minimum. I don't know. I actually called the station today, but it's Saturday and I couldn't talk to anyone to verify. Nonetheless, that's prohibitive. And furthermore, why are our elections having to be so heavily funded? So that is what kind of kicked this off for me. It's like, wait a minute. KATU is owned by Sinclair Broadcast Group and is an ABC-affiliated television station licensed in Portland, Oregon, and controls almost 200 television stations and reaches an estimated 38% of American homes. Furthermore, they invest heavily in political campaign donations on both sides. That's okay. But, you know, the fact that there's this much money being thrown into campaigns, and that you pretty much can guess that if a candidate has the most money wins. Sad enough.
Shame on,
We know our,
I say
pardon?
shame on them.
Yes, exactly. We know our media is corrupted and owned by the same corporate entities that are heavily invested in global governance. Advanced Publications, Inc. owns our Oregonian newspaper, who are actually descendants of the Newhouse family, a publishing empire. So this debate, that is the first debate for the Oregon governor, was an invitation-only event held Friday, March 18th, and it was hosted by the Oregon AFL-CIO at the Oregon Convention Center. 2 of the 36 candidates who have filed for Oregon's gubernatorial race for the primary election to be held on May 17th are Tina Kotek and Tobias Reed, both Democrats. So that was the first debate in a public venue with the Oregon AFL-CIO. And we know that the power that the unions have in terms of who wins an election. So there's that topic that anyone can address at any point through this discussion. Again, this is about fairness and integrity, and we must look at our elections, not just the voting aspect of it, which is the end run, but the process of how we get to the polls, who gets to vote, who gets to even run or be in the election, who is covered. Does anyone even have a fair chance unless they are backed by big, big bucks? That's the truth of it, and it's just got to change. So, of the 36 candidates who have filed, we know that these two individuals who had the first, I guess, the first debate, you could say, are going to be, the K2 is going to be simultaneously live streaming and broadcasting these debates coming up in Medford and Eugene areas. So, whoever gets to be in the debates, and clearly the candidate that we are interested in as an assembly, having sussed out all of the candidates and knowing the direction that we want our government to go, which is that on Oregon, it's for the people. This is a government of, by, and for the people, supposedly. And it's a de jure direction that we want to and must go. We must obtain it. This is the year we have got to go de jure. So debates are occurring also at Portland City Club and historically at the League of Women Voters. Now, remember, League of Women Voters used to be the ones who were pretty much nonpartisan. They were a group of Democrat women. It was sprung from two different groups, a suffrage group and a women's other group, but they were basically wanting to further fairness in democracy. Now that's a problem too, because, the word democracy really means how we can get the most people to vote in our party. That is a democracy. We are not wanting a democracy. We want people who are well informed to make good decisions for our republic. It's a democratic republic. That means that we need to know who we're voting for. We don't know them personally in many cases, unfortunately. We should. We hope that we can. I know that the people that I've had in representing me through the years, I may have seen them publicly, or I might have asked them a question publicly, or I've certainly written letters over the years. And I've got 70 plus in my name. And, I never really felt that I was that connected with them. I've actually met with some of them. I've met with commissioners and talked personally over coffee. I've met with individuals on committees, so there is that personal opportunity. But most of the time, it's a large gathering of people, or you get a form letter. Yes, William.
Yeah, under this democracy, I think that people misunderstand what democracy really is. I think they think that it's about the only fair way of doing something going forward or making change. And the reality of that is that the minority loses every single time. Now, under a Republican form of government without democracy, what we see is that 100% of the people would have to agree upon a change before the change could happen. And that's actually the only fair way of doing something, because they couldn't bring anything to the people without understanding that everybody would actually agree upon this. And if it came to that point and everybody didn't, they would have to look and ask those people, what is it that would cause you to not vote for this spectacular, fantastic thing that we want to do? And they would have to go back to the drawing board and include that, and then we could all agree, and then everything would actually be fair.
Yes. So, yes, Ron?
That's just exactly what they did with the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
I yield.
Yeah. So you'll recall, as of the 2016 election, the media stepped in. It may have been earlier, but that's the year I recall that it changed significantly. where the media stepped in and took command of the questions usually posed by the nonpartisan League of Women Voters. Now, how nonpartisan, I don't know, but I would like to think that they actually were trying to have a nonpartisan way of addressing candidates so that people could make their own informed decisions based on their own personal opinions and issues and all of that. But I wonder how nonpartisan. At any rate, I'd like to point out that the last Republican governor on Oregon was in 1979 to 1987, and it was Vic Atiyeh. Now, get this. Most people may not pay attention, but I've been looking at this over and over and over again for the last year, and it just rubs me so wrong. And we have to ask the question, when we bring up the issue of voting integrity, why is it that the last 35 years on Oregon, we've had nothing but a Democrat governor? All throughout our history, from the beginning of voting in our nation, we've had Republican, Democrat, for the last generations. And all of a sudden now, for 35 years. So after Vic Atiyeh in 1987, a Republican for 2 terms, and it flip-flopped back and forth between Democrats and Republicans prior to that. So as of 1987, January, Neil Goldschmidt was the 33rd governor on Oregon, Democrat, 1 term.
Pedophile.
Pedophile, yes. And the 34th governor was Barbara Roberts from January 91 to 95. She was a 1-term Democrat. Then the 35th governor was John Kitzhaber from 95 until 2003. So he served 2 terms as a Democrat. And right after him, the 36th governor was Ted Kulongoski from January 2003 to 2011, and he served 2 terms. Then John Kitzhaber again in 2011 to 2015, and he was there for a year and a half. Now, what was interesting about that, and this happens in the sheriff's lineups, this happens in a lot of government positions, and I can tell you for a fact, and it happened here on Oregon, Kate Brown was Secretary of State, and she was put in as a temporary governor to fill the position of John Kitzhaber, who is a criminal. And so she was already in position as a governor. And then lo and behold, she's elected as governor because she's already there and people know her name. There's name recognition. They don't know anything about her personally, her convictions, anything. They just know because they know her name and she's in a position. And most people just very simply think, oh, okay, I know that name. And check a box. Yes, William.
Yeah, well, we know by talking to one of our assembly members here, Ray, he worked at that office. I'm not sure exactly which office or what years he worked, but his story was that he was working one evening during the election period. I believe it was election night, and he was tapped on the shoulder and told that he could stop counting the ballots or feeding them into the machine there to be counted because they had gotten a statistical winner already. And he looked around and see that all his peers had already been sent home. And he looked at his boss and said, well, I still have a box. I have to do this. He said, no, you got to go and you got to leave now. And basically, they've taken control of the election office. And if they don't do it that way, they do it via the computer system like we've seen in the past, 6 years or whatever of obvious things. It's whoever they wish to make it on the ballot, and then they have whoever they wish to win the ballot. They have full control. And they try to make it so that it appears that these people are super popular, like having the incumbent win. Oh well, yeah, we know that usually it's always the incumbent, so they just we just accept the fact that the incumbent won because of that saying. But it's not necessarily real. And maybe these next elections here, we're going to find out that they're super corrupt when we still see Democrats in there after what's happened for the last 2 years. And I'm not backing
MK Ultra.
Republicans. I'm just stating the facts that I see.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we know that something's not working correctly on Oregon. We absolutely know it. And what happens is that if you have a chain of a one-party system in a two-party system, actually, quite honestly, which it shouldn't be. We shouldn't have one and the other because they're both, like you say, William, they're the two wings of the same bird. But it's an opportunity to pitch one candidate or one party against the other, and so they keep lobbing the ball back and forth. And the problem is,
Advertising thing for the news. It's kind of like
yeah, oh yeah,
sports teams rooting for this guy versus that guy, and that.
right, you're right, and it's all fixed in the background anyway, whether it's a game or a political. What, Brandon?
I'm sure it funnels the money up to the top.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, media loves political campaigns. They rake it in. Absolutely. So here's the thing. This is the history of the mail-in voting on Oregon. I want to cover this because, this was an issue during the last major election, national election, and that was mail-in voting versus not. And of course, we have a problem with the machines, and we know that computer voting is rife with all kinds of corruption and all of that. So besides that, here on Oregon, we were the first state on Oregon to try mail-in voting. So I'm just going to read some statistics here in some years, and I'll try to get through it pretty fast, but I think it's important to pay attention to this. So, and I am a proponent. I was a proponent of mail-in voting. I thought, why would people have to want to go out and stand in line, leave work? Some people, it should be a national holiday at least. But people have to leave work if they can even stand in line in the rain or stand in line at all and go and vote in a poll booth when you can actually do it from your bedroom in your pajamas. I thought, that's
I want to
great.
jump in at this point right now. So
Please
in
do.
I think it was 1997, the summer of 1997, when I came to Oregon. And back then, you didn't have to wait very long to be able to vote in this state. You just had to go get your driver's license. And I was shocked. I came from California, and I was shocked about mail-in voting because the first thing I thought is, how can they possibly do this without people being able to cheat easily? And then now understand, I thought that California was about as liberal as you could get until I came here. And I know that 1997 isn't the year that they started that. So the first thing that was on the ballot that horrified me beyond anything was assisted suicide, and it passed. And I thought, Lord, why did you bring me here? I yield.
Thank you, Cynthia. So, history of mail-in voting on Oregon is that ballot measure 60 made Oregon the first state in the United States to conduct its elections exclusively by mail. It was claimed to be a citizens' initiative. In 1981, the Oregon legislature approved a test of vote by mail for local elections. By 1987, vote by mail, and they refer to it as VBM, was made permanent. A majority of counties used it for local and special elections, and by June of 1993, the first statewide vote-by-mail election was held. In 1995, the second statewide election was by mail, and the Oregon legislature voted on a proposal to expand it to primary and general elections, but the governor at that time, who was Governor Kitzhaber, vetoed the bill. In December of that same year, Oregon became the first state to conduct a primary election to nominate candidates to fill a vacancy in a federal office, totally by mail. In January of 1996, Oregon was the first state to conduct an all-by-mail general election to fill a vacancy in a federal office. Senator Ron Wyden was selected to replace Bob Packwood with a 66% turnout. In 1996, the first vote-by-mail presidential primary was held in North Dakota, just weeks prior to Oregon's being the second in the country. During Kitzhaber's first term, the governor would have signed the bill to expand vote by mail to primary and general elections had it not died in the Senate committee. In May of 1998, 41% of the registered voters in Oregon are permanent absentee voters with a record low turnout of 35%. Absentee ballots represent nearly 2/3 of all ballots cast by mail. The vote by mail initiative, now this is interesting, was put on the ballot in a November general election without paid signature gatherers, a first since 1994, so that Oregon voters could decide to expand vote by mail to primary and general elections and they voted for it by over 50%. So over 50% of Oregonians voted on something that was put on the ballot without signatures, the signature sheets, the gathering that needs to ordinarily be putting an issue on the ballot. So that's a kind of an overall background. I want to throw this to Cynthia, and I want to introduce, first of all, the whole issue here of the parties. We know that we want our state to go to a Republican form of government, which is that we are a republic as promised by our founding fathers in our Constitution, the original Constitution, prior to the time that it became the United States Constitution. We want the United States Constitution of America. So we have developed over the years a Democrat Party or Democratic Party. But actually, what's happened is that in the minds of most of us, and myself included, having been a Democrat most of my life, no longer, I had this kind of hackles about being a Republican. And so I've wanted to clarify that there are good Republicans, there are good Democrats, there are good people in office who go in with the best of intentions. So this isn't about bashing one party or the other. There are elements in both parties, there are elements in humanity in general who have good intention and who mean well. And there is truly evil in both parties and among people. And this is what we're addressing, is the evil that we're facing in our political system that we all know. You cannot deny it. Being a human, conscious human being, you cannot deny that there is corruption beyond belief. And some of it is so dark and so dirty that people's lives are at risk for just speaking their truth or wanting to go for a righteous agenda. So, whether you call them rhinos, which are Republicans in name only, or Democrats, I'm sure there's another term for that, but I guess you could say communist or, whatever. The name calling has got to stop, and we really need to look at the issues and the individuals who are hopefully going to help us turn this around. So now I'm going to throw this to Cynthia and anyone else who wants to have a discussion, but Cynthia has been working tirelessly with a Republican Party, which has, every party has their own, it's almost like religion, where they are sections or segments of within a party or a group that try to break it up or take it one direction or the other. So it's a sect, there are sects within the parties. So anyway, I'm going to throw it to you, Cynthia. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to start first with the fact that up until May of 2020, I had never other than when I was young and would go out and take ballots out or to gather signatures to put stuff that I really believed in on ballots in California. I wasn't involved in this realm, other than I've always voted and had strong opinions about stuff. And so I am not an expert by any means. And in May of 2020, I became a PCP on Multnomah County. And the first thing that I recognized was the division within the party in Multnomah County. And it was bad. My first election for a chair, the lead chairperson in Multnomah County, came in June of 2020, and we elected a man named Stephen Lloyd. And he really had a lot of, he pretty much swept it. And it was soon apparent after he got in that his motives and his heart did not align with the majority of the party. Now, the very first live meeting that I got to go to, which is where I learned the most, the Multnomah County party had like doubled in size from anything it ever had when COVID shut everything down. And the first thing I heard as I was sitting down outside in this meeting of like 150 people was the murmuring that there was too many people of faith that had joined that year and that it was being taken over by the Christians. Mm-hmm. And I know someone that has been in this realm from the time I met her 17 years ago. And her name is Jo Ray Perkins. So I immediately got on the phone. And I also heard some other things. And I'm like, I knew better than just to believe everything that I've heard. But I couldn't quite figure it out. And I just went, God, you really called me into this? And I don't know anything about it. So a few months later, I joined the Oregon Statewide General Assembly. And I took that pill and swallowed it. And I've never been able to undo what I've learned. I cannot go back into the lies of our system. So I'm going to preempt it with all of that there. So what I've learned about the Republican Party in our state is that it's split and it's fractured. And in Multnomah County, we removed this last year Stephen Lloyd out of office. We impeached him and voted him, took him out because of his, he wanted a little bit of abortion and a little bit of the ABCDEFG, QB, whatever the alphabet is, and a little bit of other things, you know. And I heard him say so when he was standing up for his right and trying not to be voted out. And he was so smooth-tongued that I couldn't believe it. There became a split in the party in Multnomah County, and there's another faction that's come in. And I don't know all the details because it's not really in my lane, but I do know that it's not good. I'll fast forward to Stephen Lloyd being placed in a position at the state level, where he was communications. He got put in first as social media director, and then he's taken over a guy named Kevin Hoare's spot in the full communications director. So now he went from being kicked out because of his views that do not align with the party platform, okay? We just voted on a new 2-year platform again for the Republicans, and that does not align with it. I'm just going to say that. You know, I was there. I got to go. I got to vote. I got to be part of it. And it doesn't align. So now this person is even a bigger position. As everyone knows, Dallas Hurd just stepped down from his position as, I think they call it head chair. Forgive me if I get it wrong, but he is the lead. He was the lead in the Republican Party at the state level, and he just stepped down. And let me quote what he said. And there's a specific person that's like, there's been 3 different people that stepped down. Quoting from his own letter, Senator Dallas Hurd, a conservative from Middle Creek, wrote a letter to members of the Republican Party of Oregon announcing he will step down on March 11th. He is keeping his legislative seat. Hurd's letter encouraged his party colleagues to guard their hearts against the wickedness that exists within the Republican Party. His letter did not name any names, but mentioned someone within the party deploying tactics that have harmed his physical and spiritual health. He wrote that he can no longer survive exposure to the toxicity. He says he is stepping down due to communist psychological warfare tactics. Now, there is a certain person at the state level, and his name is Sol Yu, who somehow is responsible partially or totally for 3 other state chairs stepping out of that very position. Now, I because I do not know these people, I'm going to clarify this. I know Stephen Lloyd, and I know what a silver tongue he has, and I know that he is very convincing, and he's already ousted somebody else out of their position at the state level. And it's just ugly. I don't even know what to say, you guys. I mean, it's so.
I want to interrupt you, Cynthia, and interject something that is really what sparked this whole thing for me. Is that we have a candidate that you have spent a lot of time with. You know him, you know the people around him, and as an assembly, we trust the work that you've done. I've met him and a lot of the people around him also because we went to a dinner. And do you want to introduce him? Because he may not have an opportunity to speak out, but he is a gubernatorial candidate for the people, and he's most in alignment with the people on Oregon, and they need to know it. So could you please introduce him?
So I'm going to introduce him in the same way that I got called into all of this by the Lord. I got called into the Republican Party. I was ready for a new assignment. I had to get my heart right over some issues. It took me a year. And when I offered it up the next day, I got the answer. A few months later, I'm in a People's Rights, my first one of Oregon, in Multnomah. And it was crowded. It was summer. It was warm. It was just whatever. And I heard Mr. Ron Vrooman, the white man talking head, speak. And I remember talking to my husband and hitting him, and I'm like, oh, that's your thing right there. You need to like sign up. And we wanted to get out of there. We were hungry. I was with some other friends. We got up and we started to leave, and I heard the Lord say, get that, sign up for that. You're gonna begin to help. And I'm just like, okay. And I just did it. I grabbed it out of your hands, Ron. I put my information down and I walked out the door. I didn't talk to you guys. I didn't do anything. And the next thing I knew, I was contacted by you. And I think that very Monday or whatever, I was on the call. And I began the process of learning everything about this. And I remember asking the Lord, because it's like, this wasn't my thing. My husband's the one that knows all this stuff. And I'm like ignorant. And I had to begin to learn about it. And then there came the point where I decided that I was in with everything. It's like, I did take that pill and I cannot go back. I cannot live in a world that is built on lies. So I got to a point where I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, why am I here? I said, what good is this going to do? What's going on now? We're headed towards war on our own nation. And he told me, he goes, because it is the law that we have been bound in evil by the law, the illegitimate, the de facto law that came into existence, not only in this nation, but in the world. That is how the enemy came in and evil began to permeate. And he goes, and this is going to be the exact way that it's taken out. So now we fast forward. I'm in the Republican Party. I'm living in both worlds. I step out of my sovereignty and into that. And I go back and forth because that's what I'm supposed to do. And then here comes the gubernatorial, or however you say that word. You know, we get to see all of them in Multnomah County. There was like 16 of them that were there, and I got to vet them all, and it was fascinating and amazing. And I narrowed it down to two. One of them fed me full of a lot of stuff and didn't hold to his word, which is to me not tolerated, especially in what we do. If you say you're going to do something, you have to do it, or at least give reason why you can't. That didn't happen, so it left it to one man, Mark. Now, I wasn't intending on anything. A couple of weeks later, I get an invite from people that I pray with out on the streets in a realm, in a world, and they invited me into a meeting. And I knew the people in this meeting, and the Lord said to go into it. That is where these people, the same thing that I did, somebody else, a woman named Vicki Norris, was told by the Lord to vet all of these people running. And she came up with the same two people and ended up with the one. The one is not a perfect person. None of us are. But his truth and the things that I know have crossed over and aligned. And he is the only person that I even remotely think that has, like, between what I know and what we've been doing in the assembly and what this man knows and is willing to do, and verbally, as Charlie can attest to, stands in front of everybody and says, that can actually bring a shift and a change into this state.
Yeah, say his name so people
Mark
know who you're talking about.
Thillman. Mark Thillman, he was superintendent of Alsea School District, and he has been fighting the system for children for a long time. Amongst other things that he's learned in his 51 years of life.
Yeah, I'd like to interject if I could, and you know more than I do, but just so that we can kind of have a more, kind of more of a dialogue. I learned about Mark when I learned about Alsea School, because he was actually in the mainstream media, but it wasn't favorable. So all of a sudden I got, my I perked up and I thought, okay, what's going on here? Because, there's a lot of stuff going on in all the school districts, whether it's Newburgh with all their stuff with the superintendent they fired, or whether it's gender education for Raleigh Hills schools started by administration rather than by the kids, or some curriculum in another school district where they're learning about serial killers and writing essays on that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the schools. None of this is isolated. All of this is about good versus evil. It's all connected, and we must pay attention. And in fact, our assembly is going to be doing a grand jury on the education system, because we've had it. There is enough crap going on for our kids, from the masking and all of the vax possibility pressure to you name it. So these poor kids need us to do what's our job as parents and as responsible adults, and protect them from what's happening in their sphere.
Yes.
And if we don't pay attention, our kids are going to be really messed up. We have 2 years of challenge just with the mask mandates, not to mention those who've been vaxxed. I mean, it's so heartbreaking. So what I want to say about Mark, and then I'll just finish, and then Ron, you're next, is that, when I learned that he had kept his school open, he did not have masking going on, it wasn't a requirement. He had good attendance. He had no particular illnesses, nothing outstanding, no COVID outbreaks, any of that. And he's had nothing but grief from our government, federally and locally. And he has stood tall and strong in the face of it, even by being threatened from losing funding for his school, being challenged personally in terms of just his integrity. And he said, no, I'm standing up for these kids. So I just wanted to interject that. Go ahead, Ron.
I got two things I'd like to bring up. One is this. Can you see that? Okay. I won't read it, but briefly, we found that Kamala Harris was not qualified to be president or vice president constitutionally. We found that out. Now, if we can find that out, the people in charge of the parties on Oregon should be able to have that same knowledge. Just they should know. It's the okay. So then, if they should know, then they're responsible for that knowledge. And that was the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, the Green Party, and the Libertarians. We gave all of them the opportunity, and we named off who they are, the responsible parties for those organizations. If you have Kamala Harris on the ballot, you've broken your oath. You have no honor. And if she gets elected, it's treason. Now, we have that right here. And
Is doing, for those who don't understand, holding these persons in our government accountable. Go ahead, Ron.
and then we don't just talk bullshit, we actually do the work. And there's the proof. And William has it. And if he will, maybe he'll drop it so people can read it if they want with this. But we need to bring this up at the same time we bring up education, because this needs to be addressed also. It has to do with the election. And may I have a few more minutes here? I got just a couple more things I'd like to.
Absolutely.
Serendipity. I just love it. And Aida gets so irritated with me. She says, that's God talking. That is not serendipity.
Don't you know it's a new name for God?
Yeah, there you go. The key phrase is, we choose foreclosure. That, in such a manner as we may think proper, from Article 1, Section 1. That's what we think is proper, is to foreclose on them. So that's the law form that we should choose, I think. And that's shown on one of our documents that I don't have handy, 0407-1776A, I think. And our bona fides are proven. So then we take that on to the next one. There is no lawful legislature. We know because the grand jury gave us a true bill and we tried them, and there is no lawful legislature. So we can put that document down. It's true. Then the judiciary. And I have here the judiciary is not responsive to Charlie, and all of our documents are in order, and the judiciary has abandoned their jurisdiction. And if Charlie wants to talk on that, have at it. But I want to just finish this little bit here. She knows much more about that jurisdiction of the judiciary than I do. Sheriffs handle foreclosures. That's part of their job. It's in their job description. They get a court's order and then they follow the court's order. They do their job. So then, present the preponderance of evidence to the grand jury. We have a preponderance of evidence that they have foreclosed. We were there knocking on the door. They're locked up. There's nobody there.
Buildings are not open to the public.
There, and we went and demanded, and we cannot get a response. Therefore, they have abandoned the field. That's how it works. So the de jure Oregonians, identified as the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly, that's us. We're Article 1, Section 1 of the Oregon Constitution. We take this to the grand jury, and the grand jury either finds a preponderance of evidence or it doesn't. And the investigation is ongoing, and all actions by the defunct state of Oregon, aka capital letter state of Oregon, of Article 7 amended. That's who they are, and they're defunct. And it has been foreclosed on by the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly, speaking as Article 1, Section 1, and we can show the document, explain the document. We're a civilian court of record, show the document, explain the document. Then it comes to bankruptcy. Sheriffs handle bankruptcies. When businesses go bankrupt and the property must be liquidated, sheriffs handle the bankruptcies. And I have down here, Cheryl testifies, and others also, that the state of Oregon and the United States are bankrupt and nobody will rebut her statement. I don't know where the documents are to prove that, but it seems to me like that's a choice for the grand jury. Is there a preponderance of evidence that they're bankrupt? Okay, so we'll soon find out. There is a definite lack of services. Have you noticed that? You, you call up to ask a simple question from the corporate division of the Secretary of State's office, and the person is working from home. God, that's not, there is a definite lack of service. The police are corporate employees. They're not for peace, safety, and happiness, or they would be constitutional police officers, and they're not. Therefore, and by the way, thank you, Richard Mack, they have to self correct. Now, I don't know this, but I think this, and I'm working to prove this. If the sheriff is a constitutional officer and he has this oath and charge, and then the sheriff swears in deputies, we've all seen it in the movies. The sheriff swears in the deputies. They catch the bad guys. They try them in a court that's held in a bar because they don't have a room big enough anyplace else. And 12 men on the jury make the decision. It's easy. So then we say here, we do a claim of cognizance from our court.
Our court of record.
Our court of record in Article 7 original. to the county court as written. When you read original, there's a county court. And funny thing, there is a judge of the county court in Sherman County. The sheriff told me so. He's elected. So there is a county court on Sherman County. I don't know about the others, but that county's constitutional. Article 7 original. So then the next part is we only suppose this, it's alleged, because we cannot get a viewing of Oregon statehood documents. They failed us several times on that. So
Which is just
they've abandoned the field. If they can't present their bona fides, they've abandoned the field. And he who abandons the field is lost. So then, if we file a claim of cognizance from our court to their court, just like we've done before, Charlie, go to their Supreme Court and nail them with it, because all of the Article 7 amended judiciary falls under the Supreme Court.
Yeah. Martha.
So you take it right straight to Martha.
Yeah.
And then we write up the proper foreclosure documents for the sheriffs and copy the DA and copy Jane and all of Jane's partners all over the state and Ellen. And we will, I think, not sure, but we will have removed Article 7 amended lawfully and legally at the same time. And I yield.
Thank you, Ron. That's beautiful. Very well spoken.
I'm going to pass that on
Yeah,
to the
that's a
powers
great.
that be.
Yeah, well, it's it's been a real process to get to this point, but here we are. And I think that this it's kind of like a train going downhill. It's been faster and faster, and we've been hitting it harder and harder. And now it's like, I think the trip to Salem, when we were banging on doors and trying to be seen and heard by anyone who would give us due process, and Beaverton, yes, the week before that. Yeah, is when you get to a point where you want to be heard and recognized for what it is that you have as a burning issue, a real credible issue that needs to be addressed, and you are ignored as if you don't exist, it's not good for them. Because it's really encouraged us to really get serious with our action and our paperwork, and keep asking the questions that's going to make it's going to turn the key. The key's in the slot, and we just need to figure out that one last little way to turn it. So here we are, and thank you, Ron. That's great. So Joseph Pulitzer, this is a quote from him, and I put Occupy the media on a lot of my my missives and my emails, because I'm so frustrated by the media and how it's just run by a handful of corporate entities who really have nothing good for us, but a lot to give us as entertainment. Our republic and its press will rise or fall together. An able, disinterested, public-spirited press, with trained intelligence to know the right and courage to do it, can preserve the public virtue, without which popular government is a sham and a mockery. A cynical, mercenary, demagogic press will produce in time a people as base as itself. The power to mold the future of the republic will be in the hands of the journalists of future generations. So I just want to throw that out as a sentiment that, we must all hold everyone accountable for the truth and know what it is that we need to learn about our government, our republic, for which it stands, hopefully in integrity and for justice for all of its people. Not that we all have to agree on everything, but we do all need to be involved, and we do all need to have our voices heard, and we need to do it peacefully and intelligently. So I rest. Yes,
I have one more thing because I kind of want to bring it back around. This all
please do.
started today because of some knowledge that a TV station is not going to allow people to debate unless they have $750,000. Now, there's
Yes.
something like 18 or 19 people running. I mean, there's in the Republican Party for governor, and I don't know how many in the other. But
There are 36 or 35 candidates for this round.
yeah. So,
Yeah. 36. Yes, Ron?
I'm not done.
I don't want to interrupt, but I want to go next.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, this cannot be allowed to stand, and there is ways that we can actually fight back, and one of them is to flood them with phone calls and emails.
Them being the
Them being
stations,
the station.
KATU.
KAT. Yes. That this is not okay. That they're controlling the media and who can actually talk. Because I've been on the road following Mark wherever he goes.
Use his last name too.
Mark
Give it his full name.
Okay, I've been following Mark Thillman for governor in his campaign trail now for weeks. And I've heard him speak in all different types of platforms in all different types of counties. And I know what is going on, when he's up against the other candidates and stuff, and how well spoken he is. He literally rolls over the top because he just has the know-how, like you, Ron. I kind of equate him to a young you. So that he can actually take care of what needs to be taken care of in many ways. And he hasn't rejected, like every other governmental form in this state, the Oregon Statewide General Assembly, which is a lawful civilian court of record. He has not rejected it. He has embraced the knowledge that we have given to him.
Yes, and he's not a politician.
No, he has a mantle of government placed upon him. I'm going to tell you what politics is. This is what the Lord spoke to me the other day. He goes, do not use that word. You are not, he was talking to me, part of politics. He goes, I've placed a mantle of government upon you, and politics is polytheism, which means other gods. And that's how the parties think of themselves. They place themselves up above the people, and
above God.
And above God.
Yeah.
And they're ticks, blood-sucking ticks that carry disease and death. So when you think of politics from now on, just think of that. I am not in politics. I am in government.
Yeah.
And government
self-governing.
Is
Self-government. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I yield.
We choose to be self-governing. This is the point. This is common law. This is de jure. We are the people, and we deserve to have our own government and make our own decisions locally as we possibly can, and resolve our own issues without a ton of money from the federal or the cabal.
That's right.
I want to give the address and the phone number for KATU if anyone wants to write letters or place phone calls. I'll say it twice so you can jot it down. Maybe William can post it on this video at the end. I don't know. The address is 2153 Northeast Sandy Boulevard, Portland 97232. That's KATU Channel 2, 2153 Northeast Sandy Boulevard, Portland, Oregon 97232. Their phone number is 503-231-4222. And flood them with phone calls or emails, or I don't have their email address, but you can find
Say
it.
the number
And
one more time slowly, Charlie.
the phone number
yes.
is 503-231-4222. And they need to hear from us. And the objection, of course, is that they need to have, if they're going to air debates with the candidates, there are 36 candidates. They can figure out a way to make it fair and equal and not have it be money driven, or some segment of the population that has an agenda that happens to have a coffer of money. This is an election that is no different than the national election. We shouldn't be able to donate money to Alabama or Michigan for a governor or a mayoral race, but that's where it is. That's what politics has become. It's just like throw money wherever you can to back whatever issue is up or person, and that's not right. Their local issues have nothing to do with me. It might affect me, but ultimately, we have to start thinking locally, and we have to be participating locally at every level that we possibly can. And I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to this. Yes, Ron.
My turn.
Yeah.
I was told there's a lady running for governor on the independent party over a month ago that she had raised $4 million. $4 million. And she already had that in the bank over a month ago. That's an independent Eastern Oregon. Somebody has made the decision on who they want to be governor, and they have taken her out of the Democratic and the Republican parties. And I don't even recall her name, but money really talks.
Her name is Betsy Johnson.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Yeah, there's a lot we could say about some of the candidates, but that's not the point. We don't. We really want to promote Mark because we know
Thielman.
We know who he is. Thielman, yes, thank you. We know who he is. We know him as a human being, and that's really important. So, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate this opportunity to share our hearts and our concerns, and we hope that it has sparked some kind of interest in finding out more before you go to the polls. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, William. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Mm-hmm.
They do not want to let go of this. They do not intend on losing here. And we do not intend giving it back to them.
And then the bullets started flying. Then he jumps out of the car. And he's got both his hands up. And he got out of the car, and he had his hands in the air. He's like, just shoot me then. This is what you want, to shoot me. And they did. They shot him dead. With his hands in the air, and I saw it. I swear to God. He was just walking with his hands in the air. And they shot him. And they shot him dead, and then after he was down on the ground, they shot him 3 more times.